Hello, on the final evening of Climate Camp this year, 2009. I'm very lucky to have Ed and Dan in the studio. We're going to talk about, tell us about Workers' Climate Action.
Yeah, Workers' Climate Action is a network of activists who work in the labour movement. They're anarchists, socialists, and that it's a network of people who have been closely involved with Climate Camp and the ecological movement over the last few years. Basically, the reason for the existence of this network is we think that the ecological movement needs to orientate itself in a big way towards the struggles faced by people at work and the organisations of working class people. We think that they're...
Now, Climate Camp itself has a reputation for being white and middle class and so forth. So you think, does that concern you?
Well, I think like this question has been raised in sort of the meetings today. Sort of, there have been like in discussions I've had, there've been two sort of distinct like strands on this. One being about diversity, and the other sort of to do with action.
So I'll just interrupt you for a moment. Dan's talking about today. There was an intensive day of like 7 hours of discussion about where next. What is the future for Climate Camp? So I want him to tell us now about how that day went.
Oh, well, like today, yeah, there have been sort of some very, very big discussions about where next for Climate Camp. And some of us sort of in Workers' Climate Action, we had like quite a lengthy discussion yesterday about sort of like how to respond to that, like, and we sort of decided like and discussed sort of what we would say and what we might sort of think in those discussions. We've kind of argued for sort of Climate Camp to relate to sort of struggles in workplaces and communities. Like we consider the working class to be like essentially sort of the people who aren't the ruling class. The ruling class are the people who own everything. The workers are the ones who are sort of forced to like to work in the buildings, the kind of structures that the ruling class owns. So like we argue that Climate Camp, like largely I think the vast majority of people at Climate Camp are like people who I describe as working class. We're forced to sell our labour, and we have like a sort of an interest as a class to preserve the human race and like ensure that like we continue to survive and be happy. And sort of that's counterposed to the ruling class. So in the ruling class, we just want to make money. Like so.
Do you get any conflict about that? I mean, bearing in mind that here there are some sons and daughters of the ruling class.
Well, I mean, again, like in the sense that most people at Climate Camp work, like that's one thing. I think like. And also like we're not interested in this kind of like holier than thou sort of like sociological like thing of where you come from. Is there a piano in your house or not? Like what we're interested in is the political orientation of Climate Camp and of the ecological movement. Do we interact with the labour movement? Do we look to the struggles of working class people in the industries which we want to see changed, go to them, develop a strategy to move forward together with the workers in these industries, generally orientate ourselves towards raising ecological issues in the workers' movement, the trade unions, the labour movement in workplaces, or do we see ourselves as fundamentally separate from the workers' movement in what we do? And I think, you know, I think you look at the absolutely enormous changes in society that have been won by the working class, like working class struggles over the 20th century, from small things to like enormous things like the
and I absolutely agree.
NHS,
yeah, absolutely, I absolutely agree. So that's very interesting because it suggests. I mean, I was in some of the meeting today. It suggests that Climate Camp might move from being a physical location, like an annual campsite, to more like a metaphorical idea. You know, an idea that goes into every workplace and every community.
I think it's important to like see it not just as an idea but as a sort of like a functioning network. One thing we've kind of argued for today is that sort of neighbourhoods should be responsive to things that happen in their local area, local workplace struggles and community struggles. Like this could be anything from sort of like in sort of communities that are flooded because of climate change, like Climate Camp sort of coming in and like offering solidarity and like bringing with that like solidarity a sort of a message about the ecology and climate change. Like also in the workplace, like we should go to sort of picket lines, for example, and like support workers in struggle against our common enemy, capitalism, which is the root cause we see of climate change. And so we're all part of the fight against capitalism, and we bring Climate Camp should sort of bring an ecological stance to that. For example, like bus workers going on strike. There's a big sort of ecological question there, like good quality public transport is like essential in like cutting carbon emissions, and like we call on sort of workers in those industries to like fight for like a sustainable, like democratically controlled industry.
I've heard people say that once you call Climate Camp anti-capitalist, you know, you immediately alienate a lot of people. What do you think about that?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to be clear about what you mean by anti-capitalist. I think, you know, there's a lot of buzzwords that go around that can quickly become sort of empty and meaningless. I think, like, if, like, the anti-capitalism that I espouse isn't merely negative, like, you know, I have a positive idea of the kind of society that I want to see, a society in which industry is controlled democratically by the people who work in it, the people who use it, and the route that I see to achieving a society like that is one in which the majority of people, those who work for a living, organise to take control of the productive processes that they carry out each day, and organise them in a way that's rational and humane. Rational in terms of preserving the climate, and humane in terms of preserving and not like completely like screwing up the lives, the bodies, the pensions of the people who work in industry.
Thank you, that's very inspiring. For more of our shows, go straight to climatecamp.tv. Good evening.